Hey, this is Warren Redlick with the AI Stocks Report. We're going to talk about what happened with AI stocks yesterday a little bit later in this video. We're going to start by talking about Nvidia. Their earnings is tomorrow. We're going to cover Elon Musk's lawsuit with OpenAI, but I want to start with this cute, silly video from Nvidia just
Ladies
to
and
give you
gentlemen, witness the
some
symphony of
idea
progress. Our
of
technology is evolving
what
before your
AI
eyes.
generating
The
video
future
can
is
do
arriving, more
today.
advanced than
And
ever.
then if you think
This is
about
the
it, what's
power of
coming and
innovation.
why does that matter for the future? You can see here that Jensen, this is a silly video. Jensen's doing kung fu. Then we're gonna sneak in some Las Vegas showgirls at the end of the video. This is just I took a picture of Jensen and I animated it using AI and made it silly, and I wanted you to get a sense of how that might lead to the future of AI. So the point of that video is that just goofing around with Grok, I was able to generate a fun video. We are at the very early stages of AI being able to generate video. It didn't take that long, but soon it's going to be, if you understand what Jensen says about the Vera Rubin hardware that's coming, it's going to be 100 milliseconds from your prompt to the video starting. And then 2 or 3 years after that, it's going to be inexpensive to get real time video conversation with an actual AI avatar. And I personally think, if you follow the history of technology at all, there's going to be an adult entertainment version of this. My current speculation is it will be run out of Cambodia and Myanmar, running off of Chinese servers, because China is going to be the only place on earth that's going to have sufficient compute to support the demand that'll be there. But my point is, this is the kind of thing that drives demand for inference compute. Today, you have one goofy podcaster who's doing this, and a few other people are doing this, and I'm going to be using clips like this at the start of my videos, not silly Jensen clips, but you're going to see clips on this side of the screen for a lot of my videos to start, on the theory that that engages the audience. I think there's a lot of reasons why people are going to generate video clips. As more people generate more video clips, that's more demand for inference compute. And that is one of the big drivers of these stocks that we're talking about, particularly ASML, TSMC, Nvidia, Broadcom, AMD. Not so much for Palantir. For Google, Google will probably be doing this. SpaceX has their IPO coming up. This is from SpaceX XAI. So there's a lot here that's coming, and there's so many other ways that we're going to see demand for inference compute grow. And my theory, and I don't know the answer to this, and I don't think anyone really knows, is the demand for inference compute might rise faster than the supply of inference compute. And if that happens, everyone's talking about, well, inference, intelligence is going to be everywhere and it's going to be cheap. It's like, well, if the demand for artificial intelligence goes up faster than the supply of artificial intelligence, then the price of artificial intelligence actually rises. I don't know how that's going to play out, but I think this scenario that people are talking about, that everyone's going to have infinite compute available all the time, maybe 20 years from now, maybe 10 years from now, not 3 years from now. It's going to be a long time before the supply of compute catches up to the demand, and the demand may just keep rising like crazy because there's so much there. Let's get into Nvidia first. The biggest thing to watch for this week is Nvidia is reporting their earnings on Wednesday, May 20th, after market closes. So that's basically 2 trading days away. There's a lot that Wall Street is looking for, a lot that investors are looking for. As long term investors, we're looking for some other things, but let's talk about what's coming. There's a question. Is AI infrastructure spending still accelerating? Number one question. Wall Street wants confirmation that these hyperscalers are still increasing AI data center spending. You're going to see, I have a news story coming that a company I didn't anticipate is about to spend a lot of money on AI data centers. So there's a lot more coming here. This is my learning journey. Like, I don't want you guys to think Warren's some AI expert or some stock expert on AIs. This is my learning journey so that I understand AI stocks better, and I'm sharing my journey with you. I think I have a better understanding than a lot of people about AI. I think I have a better understanding than a lot of people about stocks, but I am still learning, and I'm gonna share with you what I learn along the way. So there's stuff I do know and the stuff I don't know, and I have I think a pretty solid picture of what I think is happening, but I'm still learning, and I hope that's why you don't want to rely on Warren says. You want to understand we're on a learning journey together. And I hope that I'm helping you develop your learning about AI. So consensus expectations are enormous. The markets are expecting $79 billion in quarterly revenue, $1.75 to $1.78 earnings per share, 80% year-on-year growth. So the issue is not the quarter itself. The issue is, does Jensen guide higher? Nvidia has repeatedly exceeded what investors thought was possible. We'll see. I think that I'm not so sure that I'm worried about what Jensen guides in terms of numbers, because what I see is Nvidia usually outperforms the numbers that he guides. So what does that mean? Keep on, what we're talking about here is Wall Street buzz and my reaction to Wall Street buzz, less so than, taking what's here as the gospel or what I say as the gospel. Blackwell demand is reportedly still insane. I believe this is both the GB200 and the newer GB300. Elon said that the GB300 was the best AI chip out there. Several analysts now frame Nvidia less as a chip company and more as an AI infrastructure utility or AI factory provider. They center on hyperscaler orders, sovereign AI projects, networking demand, full rack AI systems. This is the thing. Nvidia doesn't just make chips. They make rack servers that contain their chips. AMD is getting into this game as well, doing this game as well. Inference clusters. The market especially wants updated shipment commentary, margin commentary, production ramp commentary. I'm less worried about the temporary numbers. I think the long-term picture is clear, but you can see where if all the stocks are anticipating really short-term growth, and then there's some chink in the armor of short-term growth, then the stocks might fall because the earnings expectations or the growth in the near future is threatened. I don't think that threatens the long-term future that I see coming with stocks, with AI stocks, but this is how the markets think about these things. Vera Rubin is becoming the next narrative driver. Investors are already looking past Blackwell towards Vera Rubin. The emerging thesis is Blackwell is a training supercycle and Rubin is real-time agentic inference supercycle. This is going to be interesting to hear if Jensen talks more about that. I think that Vera Rubin is still going to be really important for training. Typically, NVIDIA hardware is sort of multi-purpose. I do believe that Jensen has talked about it as role in inference, in particular video generation that we talked about earlier. But I have a feeling that Vera Rubin is also going to be really critical for training compute. Vera Rubin is expected to massively improve inference throughput, memory bandwidth, rack scale efficiency, and multimodal workloads. Wall Street increasingly believes persistent AI agents, multimodal inference, real-time video, and humanoid robotics could create a second explosive wave of GPU demand. I don't think Wall Street is pricing in humanoid robotics much. Real-time video. Look, Jensen said that he expects Vera Rubin to deliver real-time video with 100 millisecond latency. So, in other words, I think what he means is you submit the prompt, and 100 milliseconds later, less than a second later, the video starts. I don't think that's real-time video as I understand what real-time video is going to be. And I think we're looking 2 to 3 years out before we get the true real-time video where you're having a conversation with, if you use Grok Imagine or Grok and you have a conversation with a companion, right? Ani, the sexy companion, right? If you have that conversation, it's sort of smooth. It's not super low latency. And Ani is not really truly real-time video generated avatar. That's some tricks there that make that work. So that's where I think it's going. And I think that's probably, Vera Rubin will be close to that capability but very expensive. And so you need to get that level of compute that fast, but inexpensive. And assuming that inference compute costs come down, which is a big question based on my thesis that demand increases faster than supply. Assuming that inference cost does come down, I still think you're talking about 3 years away before real-time video becomes truly useful and gets a lot of users, where the cost is reasonable enough that lots of people can use it. So multimodal inference, sure. Persistent, agentic AI is huge. I think one of the challenges for all the hardware companies is trying to develop their hardware so it satisfies the current craze, but also satisfies long-term needs. So agentic AI is hot now. Is agentic AI something that's going to spread to where the average user uses it? Is it going to be a niche? Like it's a big niche, but is it just going to be a niche thing? Like I haven't used it yet. Unless you count using Grok Beta, Grok whatever that has sort of agents. I actually have a plan to use an agentic AI on my laptop to develop something for my apps whenever I find time for that. The funny thing is I don't have the time to get my agent going. It's the current rage. Is agentic AI still going to be the big thing in 2 years, or are we going to move down to something else? Are the killer apps coming? What's happening? So I think long term is just you can see the explosive demand coming many different ways, and you don't necessarily know what it's going to be. And then if you're designing chips and you're designing hardware, you might not know how to design for you might have an idea of how to design for the current rage, but the next thing's coming in 6 months and you might be way off on what you designed for. So what NVIDIA does is they target, well, here's our general compute. What Tesla does with its inference compute is, well, we know what we need for real world AI operations, for driving cars and operating robots, we have a much better idea. We have a fairly simple use case, but you have a really complex world of use cases for the data center cloud AIs that's going on. So that's going to be interesting. Big uncertainty related to China. President Trump and a bunch of people, including Jensen and Elon, went to China to talk to the Chinese leadership. The markets are looking at China as a big swing factor in the call. Intense focus on export controls, H200 approvals, H20 restrictions, Beijing negotiations. A recent estimate suggested that Nvidia absorbed an $8 billion China-related hit tied to restrictions. $8 billion isn't a lot of money for Nvidia. I don't know why people are worried about this that much. Long term, Nvidia is going to be somewhat restricted in what they can sell to China. China's a big market. China is probably going to end up supplying them their own AI chips. I don't think this is going to be the big market for Nvidia in the near term. If it ends up being that China is the only one with electricity and everybody else can't build data centers anymore because they don't have electricity, then China becomes a much more important market for Nvidia. I'm not sure that it's that important of a market for Nvidia yet. It could be. Reports circulated that some H200 sales to China may be allowed. Negotiations may be thawing slightly. Analysts want Jensen to answer the question, how large is the real China opportunity? Is demand permanently lost or merely delayed and rerouted? I think that's a decent medium-term concern for NVIDIA. The reality is that demand for NVIDIA hardware is so huge in the West that I don't know that China matters that much. It doesn't hurt to have more, but I don't know that it matters that much. Networking is becoming a huge story, underappreciated by retail investors. NVIDIA's networking business, InfiniBand, Spectrum X Ethernet, NVLink systems becoming strategically critical. This is where Broadcom has a lot going on too, by the way. Large AI clusters increasingly bottleneck on interconnect, bandwidth, synchronization, memory movement, things that happen between the chips. Your chip can be great, but the chips need to communicate with each other, and they need to communicate with whatever is orchestrating everything. And you can end up having poor utilization of your GPUs if you don't have good networking inside your data center. The street thinks networking could become one of NVIDIA's highest margin businesses and one of its strongest moats. This directly affects Broadcom, Arista, Marvell, TSMC, and SK Hynix. Broadcom clearly big player in networking inside data centers. Arista also, Marvell also. Investors are watching for signs of AI capex fatigue. This is the bearish concern. I'll show again. I have a piece of news coming on that later in this video. Skeptics ask, are hyperscalers overbuilding? Is AI monetization lagging? Will enterprises slow spending? So far, the evidence still points the other direction. Hyperscaler capex keeps rising. Enterprise AI demand keeps accelerating. Inference workloads are exploding. Many analysts now think inference could become larger than training over time. Inference is very clearly going to be larger than training over time. There's a really important role for training compute, but I think it was James Douma said to me at one point, or said at one point, that inference compute was 90% or 95% of AI compute already, and this was a couple years ago. Training is teaching your model to be better, building a better model that works better. Inference is answering questions, is asking the model that you've built to answer the questions that users have, to respond to prompts. So if the race to build more infrastructure continues to rise, then NVIDIA does well, and so do pretty much all the companies in our AI stocks report index go up if this is good news for everybody. And I just think maybe we're placing too much concern on what happens in NVIDIA's earnings call, but it's usually a boost. And then one thing we know, the markets don't react the way you expect when there's earnings call. We've known that from Tesla. We just saw that with Palantir and AMD. We'll see. NVIDIA may announce more shareholder returns. There's growing speculation about a larger dividend or a massive buyback authorization. Not something that long-term investors worry about. With NVIDIA generating so much cash flow, some investors expect some sort of mature mega cap behavior where they hand out some cash to the shareholders. Not what I'm looking for as an investor. I don't worry about that. Invest in your business, grow your business. The street increasingly believes NVIDIA is becoming an infrastructure monopoly. That's a deeper narrative shift. Earlier AI cycles assumed AMD would quickly catch up. This is odd because NVIDIA's PE ratio is 45 and AMD's PE ratio is like 140. So the market seems to expect AMD to grow faster than NVIDIA. I don't know that that's true. I think AMD stock may be very overpriced. This is a good time for me to mention that I just published a new options video. I have a series of options videos. If you are a supporter, then you can get access to those videos and they can help you think long term. The perception is that NVIDIA is expanding its moat with CUDA networking, rack systems, etc. I wish the people who do this Wall Street buzz stuff would make up their minds what they believe, because it's a real interesting thing to ponder why AMD is Very similar business to Nvidia has a PE ratio that's like triple or more than triple Nvidia's PE ratio. And be clear, I'm invested in Nvidia. I'm not invested in AMD, so maybe I have a bias. That Nvidia earnings call is coming in less than 48 hours. That's going to be a big moment. You're going to want to pay attention to that. We'll see what happens with it. Okay, with that Nvidia stuff out of the way, we're going to speed run through the buzz, Wall Street buzz on the stocks and the news. Palantir was up slightly, the only stock that was up yesterday. Let's be clear. I'm going to tell you the buzz. I think it's just volatility, volatility, volatility. Wall Street buzzes continued strength in U.S. commercial revenue. Analysts remain constructive on the multi-year setup. Short-term volatility persists. Today's move reinforces Palantir can decouple positively when commercial traction's in focus. I didn't see any significant Palantir news that would drive this. I think it's just the volatility causes some stuff, and it's not up a lot. It was up, barely, not even 1%. Google was nearly zero, moves negative 0.05%. Wall Street digesting Google's steady AI cloud progress. Long-term thesis intact around Gemini advancements, TPU infrastructure. Some more news about that coming. And Google Cloud's growing AI revenue contribution. Google's I/O event starts today. I did a video about that yesterday. Apparently, no one cares. One of my theses about why Google stock is underpriced is you guys don't care. If I talk about Tesla, you guys get excited. SpaceX, you guys get excited. Nvidia, maybe you guys get excited. If I talk about, Anthropic or OpenAI, people are excited about that. No one seems to get excited about Google. And I think Google is in great position to lead. So a lot of things going on here. Google tends to be one of the least volatile of the stocks and one of the companies that, from everything I see, has some of the best things going for it and has some weaknesses that I discussed in the video yesterday. I think Google's the biggest one to watch, but they're all interesting. But Elon says that Google's going to win the West. I don't know how you guys are not watching that. Tesla down 2%, volatility. ASML down 2%. Really puzzling why ASML's showing so much volatility when it's a really boring Dutch company that makes an essential product that has a basic monopoly. But it just does. AMD down about 3%. AMD is the most volatile. I think it may actually be more volatile than Tesla, which is saying something. My gut is if Nvidia goes up, AMD will probably go up with it. If there's a perception that Nvidia is going to take market share away from AMD, that's a problem for AMD. I suspect that's not coming. The big news for most people who follow me is the jury dismissed Elon Musk's lawsuit against OpenAI. I think technically the judge dismissed the lawsuit. This was a statute of limitations issue. The basic argument or the basic issue was that Elon filed his lawsuit too late. OpenAI said he should have filed the lawsuit earlier, and you have a 4-year window, and he didn't file within the 4-year window. It was too late. Elon says he's going to appeal. His lawyer says they're going to appeal. We'll see. The big reason this matters is because OpenAI is getting themselves in position for an IPO. And if they had this hanging over their head, if this went against them, it would have made their IPO a lot harder. Now they're in a pretty good position to go forward with their IPO and not have this kind of litigation hanging over their heads. Google I/O event kicks off today, heavy AI focus. I'm not going to talk much about that because I covered that yesterday in great depth in yesterday's video. If you want to see more about that, check that out. Check out yesterday's video. The piece of news that I mentioned earlier I wanted to bring up is there's this question about demand for hyperscalers, for the growth of data centers. We have this news that Blackstone announced a joint venture with Google to create a new US company that will offer efficient data center capacity using Google's TPUs. There's this bit here that caught me off guard. When I say I'm still learning, Blackstone is the world's biggest alternative asset manager with over $1.3 trillion in assets under management. I think I knew that. And the largest global provider of data centers. What? That I didn't know. And I asked Brock, largest provider of data centers? I don't think that's a really fair characterization. They are a player in the data center game, maybe through funding them. I don't think they're operating them that much. And that's an interesting question to dive into. I'm going to learn more about this in the future. Is Blackstone an important player in the world of AI that I haven't been covering? We'll have to look into that. Blackstone making an initial commitment of $5 billion in equity capital from funds. They expect to bring the first 500 megawatts of capacity online in 2027 with plans to scale significantly over time. Keep in mind that xAI's Colossus 2 is more than a gigawatt. So this is not as big as xAI's second data center, right? So it's 500 megawatts is big. How long over a period of time is it going to take to spool this out? How big is this going to be long run? It's not going to hurt, but this is, more demand for AI data centers, and that ahead of Nvidia's earnings call. Now, this is not Nvidia chips. Google gets its chips through Broadcom, but still, the demand for AI hardware is growing fast, and this is just one more sign of that demand. Now, my gut is that the Nvidia perspective is, hey, we're the most efficient compute. I think they're the most energy efficient compute. They're not the most cost efficient compute, and so Google probably has an advantage here in some ways. How does this all play out? Google still buys Nvidia chips. I'm the guy saying whoever has the most inference compute wins the most. Everybody wins. Whoever has the most inference compute wins the most. If the market is saying that, if wealthy players like Blackstone are saying, hey, we need to build out more AI inference compute, maybe I'm right. Another big piece of news, the SpaceX IPO documents are expected to be released tomorrow, May 20th. I think the reports were as early as next Wednesday. SpaceX plans the public IPO filing as soon as Wednesday. Did something change? Did something happen that is going to delay the IPO release? I don't know. But there are reports that we're going to find out more details. And when there's a SpaceX IPO filing that I can read, I can guarantee you I'm going to read it in depth, and there will be a specific video on this channel in depth about the SpaceX IPO. Same for OpenAI, same for Anthropic, same for Anduril. Any prominent AI company that's going to have its IPO, we'll do an in-depth dive onto what that company's doing. And in particular with SpaceX, is there a mention of a merger with Tesla? What is said about their working with Tesla on Terafab? Is that in the IPO documents? If that's in there in a meaningful way, that helps the insanity in the Tesla community about fears and loathing about a potential Tesla SpaceX merger. The last thing to cover is Analyst Watch. There are two analyst reports on Nvidia raising price targets. Nvidia currently trading at $222 a share. DA Davidson raised their price target to $300 a share. KeyBank raised their price target to $300 a share. So these companies are both very positive about Nvidia. And like I said, we're going to see the earnings report Wednesday, and that's going to give us a lot going forward. It's the same stuff everybody says about Nvidia, and the practical reality is Nvidia is the 800-pound gorilla of AI compute. So if you're betting on AI, Nvidia is sort of a core bet that you kind of have to make in AI. Before we wrap up, I want to mention again, I have a new options video, options arbitrage relating to AMD and Google. If you're interested in options strategy, options thinking, this is a wild card. This is a weird one, but paying supporters on Patreon, YouTube channel members, and X subscribers get access to these videos. Please support me on those platforms in order to get access to some radical thinking about options that relate to long-term investing, and both in long-term options and also thinking long-term about how you think long-term about these companies. I think there's tremendous insight in understanding this stuff about both AMD and Google in particular, but also all the other companies. Thank you so much for watching.